My name's Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Welcome to edition 68 of the Food Safety Fridays webinar programme. Today's presenter is Jennifer McCreary from NSF International, and today's topic is allergen management. Now, a lot of recalls and incidents are related to poor allergen management. And so Jennifer's here today to tell us about some of those incidents and also to give us some tips on how we might look at our own food safety quality management systems and make them a little bit more robust and mitigate some of those potential issues. Right. Today's webinars and the Food Safety Fridays webinar program is sponsored by Trace Analytics, Mettler Toledo, Safe Food 360 and AIB International. These kind organizations help to bring this program to you free of charge, get you some free education and also a free certificate of attendance. Just to say the chat bar, draw your attention to the chat bar. As you're already using it, I can see lots of you and you'll be familiar with it. Please type your comments and questions throughout. We will be having Q&A afterwards. So type throughout, talk to each other, answer each other's questions, support each other, and ask questions. And we'll ask Jennifer and we'll have some Q&A later. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we do issue within a few hours the video recording, the slides and the certificate of attendance if you don't pick it up today. So that's pretty much everything at this point. I'd like to welcome Jennifer. If you can switch your webcam and mic on, Jennifer. How are you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing great. I hope I'm here. I hope everybody is able to hear me.
Yes, can see you and hear you loud and clear. And I noticed a couple of people typed in and said hello from Toronto. So I don't know if they're friends, family, or whatever. So to make you feel at home.
I noticed that that there were some local folks as well.
There you go, and from all over the world, literally all over the world. We've got over 1,400 registered today, so we're looking forward to a nice session. And okay. So if you can get your slides ready, I'll talk about next week's webinar, Jennifer, and I'll see you later. Ladies and gents, just draw your attention to the Offers tab in the sidebar. There you'll see a photograph of Britta Ball, 3 requirements for commitment to food safety. That's next Friday's webinar. So I wonder if between now and then you can wonder and think about what those 3 requirements for commitment to food safety are. If you can't, don't worry. Join us next week and Britta will tell you all about it. Okay, for now, I'll see you later. Hand over to Jennifer and I'll be back for the Q&A later. Okay.
Thank you, Simon. Hello, everyone again. I want to thank Simon and IFSQN for this opportunity to speak with you today and hopefully perhaps share some information on some additional focus on allergen management. Just a bit, I represent NSF, and hopefully you are familiar with NSF. We are international, having 47 offices in 27 countries, and we're able to offer services in 150 different countries. Food safety and quality trainers who I'm with. We also have management consultants, scientists, so looking at labeling, research, product development, and then where some of you may be more familiar with us is as the NSF as our international certification body. So what I want to do today is review some of the reasons that we have for allergen recalls that have happened internationally, looking at that, and then taking that information and using Ishikawa or the 6M or fishbone, or however you tend to refer to it, is to look at why those recalls, what are some of the sources of those recalls, and then look at identifying what are opportunities for error proofing. So how do we prevent those those issues that end up causing us an allergen recall and reduce those, either reducing the mistakes or preventing them, and then as well to go back and look at our food safety system and look at where we can strengthen our food safety system so that we're preventing those recalls in place. So just a reminder of the danger of undeclared allergens. It's that it's a hazard, is when the allergen is in the product, the proteins in the product, and it's not on the label. The only way to avoid an allergic reaction is to avoid the food. And so our allergic individuals, they rely on the accuracy and the completeness of that label. And so that's one of the things when we're looking at undeclared allergens is that label is our first line of defense to protect that allergic individual. Now, we've talked about undeclared allergens for a number of years. GFSI's looked at it, different food safety programs have looked at it, Fisma's looked at it, but it doesn't. There still are problems that even with all of the effort over the last 10 to 15 years to identify allergens, put allergen management programs in place, as you can see from some of this data, that we're going in the wrong direction. That now part of this, I believe, is probably because there is more awareness of allergens, and so this is probably, in a lot of cases, it's companies have caught the allergen issue themselves, and are handling the recall. But one of the things that we want to do is to say, how can we prevent that recall from happening in the first place? How can we strengthen our food safety system so that we are preventing it rather than having to react to it after the fact? Now, some of you maybe have seen this information before. Those of you who've taken the Fisma preventive controls training, is that this is some of the information that was provided in there. This information was actually from Jendal and Zhu. It was published in the Journal of Food Protection back in 2013, and they did root cause on different recalls that had happened, just really to have an understanding of the why. What was it that we needed to do to prevent allergen recalls from happening in the industry? It also was kind of also based on some analysis of food allergen recalls from the European Union, USA, Hong Kong, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And so what they found was that all of the most common was because of wrong labels, terminology not being correct. That was something like not being common allergen labeling, so that instead of saying milk, the supplier had used a term like caseinate that was not the common language. No carry through, that was the supplier of a raw material had put a may contain, and that was not carried through onto the finished product. And then the last one's kind of cross contact, wrong ingredient. The person just grabbed the wrong ingredient, put it in, and then reworked that. Allergen containing rework was reworked into not. What we're going to look at and focus on today is really the first one, the wrong label or the package. And what we're going to do is look at this from what are the reasons that can happen, and then making sure that we've put a practice or a procedure or a policy, engineer the problem out if possible, so that looking at our food safety program, what can we do to make this very difficult for an employee and operator to put the wrong label on. And how we're going to look at it, I was going to look at it using the Ishikawa. As you know, some of you know, this is fishbone 6M. And so we look at the different factors. The primary factors are the ones that are identified there. And then we look at what the secondary factors are, the things that would have an impact or have a source that would end up allowing the operator to put that product into the incorrect package, or that the label itself isn't correct. And so what it does is that we'll look at those 6. Then what we want to do is look and say, okay, from that, is there something that we can do with our system, with our process? Either it's kind of the same thing as to error-proof it or mistake-proof it. You may be more familiar with this as poke yoke. And so what it is it's having something that makes it either impossible for the operator to make the mistake, or that it's really visually obvious that somebody has made a mistake. And one that you may be familiar with is sort of the garbage cans at the local fast food restaurant. The one on the left was one that has probably still in use, but was in use. And what was happening is that the restaurants were losing a lot of their trays. It was, as people were throwing their trash out, the tray went into the garbage can, and now we've got a cost that's associated with that. The one on the right is now, instead of having that square that the tray will fit into, is that now it's round, it's small, trash still goes into it, but to the person who's throwing out the trash, that it won't fit, and so it's not supposed to go in there, and that it also makes it impossible for that error to occur. So what we want to look at is, what can we do once we know what might be some issues in our process? What can we do to make sure that we have something that is making it possible for a person to make a mistake, or that it's something that they can see that it's obvious? So we're going to start off with people first. And here we're really looking at part of our review. And what I want to look at is that this is really going beyond. We may have, as part of our internal audit or our regular assessment, that we're looking at people, but we want to look at this as to do a bit deeper dive into this. So from that labeling and putting the wrong label or having the wrong label that's there, what's the impact of the people? What's the impact of their training? Are they aware that's there? What's their experience that's in place? And so when we look at people, we look like, are they capable? Their capability, do they have the means of being able to look at what the packaging is? Their attitude that they have. Do they have the attitude that a may contain statement? Well, it's a may contain statement on the package. I don't need to do anything else. Are they aware of allergens? Have they had job training that's in place? And then as well, are they adhering to the procedures, the protocols, and the methods that we may already have in place to look at the label and the correct that's in there? Barriers that they may have, and then again, their competencies and their abilities. What is their literacy? Are they able to read? Are they able to distinguish between packaging? So we're going to look at some of these issues. When we look at it, and this is part of with people training, I know that you all probably have allergen training that's in place, but really, are people, have they gone through the training, or are they allergen aware? Do they really understand the why that's there? So looking at it, that there's an understanding of that allergen awareness, why they must follow it, that the label, that they understand that information that's on the label is key for a consumer to be able to avoid the allergen. They know the package knowledge that's there. And do they know how to load that? Do they know what to check? How to implement and follow those? So when we're looking at that, it's not just that the training is there, but it's also assessing their performance. So it's looking and I know some of you are probably looking at the picture here. We're talking about allergens today. We'll look at good GMP, so no rings, and that at another time. But this is really looking at the performance. And so with it, we want to do performance monitoring. Now that really should be left to their managers and supervisors. And part of going back to people is that, we may have given training to the operator. What training has been given to the supervisors, the managers who are overseeing these folks? Because it is human nature. We do what our supervisors, our managers are looking at. So if they're monitoring, are they giving the right information to these folks, that the right correct packaging is paramount? Or is it more, we need to get this product packaged, just get the bags on there, and looking at that productivity. However, we need to make sure that the supervisors and the managers, that they realize that if we have labeling and packaging errors, and that packaged product has to be repacked or has to be go to waste, that really is affecting our productivity as well. We also have to have a competency assessment. That what this is that person, again, back to it, are they competent? Is that it may, or, do they have that literacy? Do they have that ability to catch an error if somebody's given them the wrong packaging that's there? So do they have that ability? Some of the things, again, when we're reviewing this, that going through is looking at the complexity. People in the system. The person may be competent, they may know what they need to do, but what it is that we've just made it really difficult, that complexity. So where people who are working with, a limited number of SKUs, there's only maybe a couple of changeovers a day, that's much easier for those people to be able to ensure that they're putting the right packaging on. Whereas if there's something that those are changing, we're changing the label, every 15 minutes, we've got a large number of SKUs, stock keeping units that are there, a lot of packaging that, we've got the same product, but we're changing the packaging through. It may be that we're having these people having to make a lot of decisions as we're going through. Number of packaging labeling shifts changes per shift. A lot of decisions. What package do I put on there? Do I have the right packaging that goes along with this formula? And then, do these people have access to the relevant and timely information? If there's been a change to packaging, do I know what packaging I need to put in? If there's been a change to the allergen, is there an allergen cleanup that's needed in between? And so it's really important, and this is where it's something of asking the people who are on your packaging line, like, how many changes do they have to make? What decisions are they having to make? Do they have access? And it's not just the people who are perhaps the key people, but also, if there's a backup person that's there, are they capable of backup person substitute? Are they capable of handling that same situation? So we'll look at some of that. And one of the other things in terms of this complexity that it looks at as a review is also to look and say, are our operators making a lot of decisions? Are they making a lot of corrections? Is it our system may be broken, but our people are making corrections to, it doesn't say that there's supposed to be an allergen clean right now before I put it, go on to the next product, but they know that's there. So we have to look at what the near hits, those errors that, if it hadn't been for the person the operator who had made a change, we would have had an error. We would have had product that was packaged in the wrong product. So it's key that we know, not only looking at what people need to put there, but is it the system that's making sure that it's the right packaging that's on there, or is it the people? And if it's the people, then we need to go back and change the system to make sure that it is driving the correct information that's being put on the product. And that's where our error proofing comes in. And so it looks at this is that our step is training. And one of the things is that with training is that do we have a knowledge check? Do we know that the person, kind of looks at that they've understood what the allergens are, that they've looked, that they understand what they need to do, and that there's a check at the end of training. Where we're going to have an increased opportunity for error is if we just have the training and they're done and they're gone and they're back on the line. So no knowledge check. The second one is not only just knowing the knowledge, but are they able to apply it? And so now, are they able to put that information into practice? And so that's now an at-line knowledge check. What that means is that perhaps it's going out, it's as part of that review that with the operators who are there is asking them that how they know which packaging they need to use, that there's which ones would have allergens, how they know what to select. And then where we've got an increase for opportunity for error is if we just say, we've ticked that box, we know that they've had training, they're back on the line, we don't check that they're actually able to put it in practice. So now we've got an increase opportunity for the wrong packaging to go onto the line. Error detection here, so we had the training, the knowledge check. With error detection, what it is having some work aids for them to look at. So one of the things that's going to decrease the potential error is if we had images of the labels at the line. What is that package supposed to look like that is there that I'm supposed to be putting on? Now, what it is we have those images there. What we also have to make sure is that the images are checked, that the operator, the supervisor, the manager, QC, QA are comparing that image with what the packaging that's actually on the line. And as we can sort of think next is that if we don't do that, we don't have an image of those labels at the line, or that the only thing that the person's looked at is just that, it looks the same. They haven't really checked the text that's there. We are going to potentially have incorrect packaging being put on that line, and then product that's been packed into that packaging. Ongoing from there is one step further. So that's the right packaging being put on. Another one for looking at making sure that we're error proofing is production changeovers. And so what this one is that it looks at what's that line clearance? Is there a procedure for that line clearance? Is there an activity that goes through for that line clearance? And it's not just making sure that all the packaging has been taken off, but is there packaging caught up in the line someplace? Packaging that perhaps is there from kickouts from the metal detector? Is there packaging that's there from perhaps it needs to be a repack? Those are all things that have to be included as part of that line clearance procedure that's in place. And if we have that line clearance procedure, again, increasing that detection of those errors is going to be even better if that line clearance is a lead hand or a supervisor, not necessarily the operator, but another set of eyes that have looked at that, so that we've got two people, the operator's done the line clearance, and then there's a sign off by the lead hand and the supervisor that's verified that line clearance has taken place. So these were really the things as we went through that we reviewed and saw that there was potential for errors to happen, that we'd had to look at, things that we could error proof or mistake proof. What we then need to go through is go and look at our existing food safety system. So does our existing food safety system, what are the personnel policies? Is it the person who is the most competent, who has the ability to, to operate a packaging machine that has, is given that position, or is it a case of that, it's seniority that's there, that's in place. It also may be sort of job descriptions that are in place, responsibilities, authorities, looking at that job qualifications. For packaging, it may need to be literacy, that you have to have a certain level of literacy, color, looking for color vision so that you're not picking up the wrong packaging. So we need to go, so what it is going back and reviewing this food safety system, these parts of it, to look and say, okay, does this really identify things that are needed for these people so that they can package the line correctly? Training. Does our training really, is it just about allergens, or have we really emphasized the need for these procedures, and are we checking that it's activate, that when they're going on the line, that they're taking their training that they've learned about from the allergens, and that's what they're doing in place. And then finally, is it our supervision, our management accountabilities? In this case, it's their attention to making sure that the performance and the competency is in place. So it's really what are they reinforcing with the operators so that it's the right label is put on there and not forgotten. Okay, so we've looked at people. Our next one is equipment, and here is we're looking at that the equipment that it's appropriate for what we're going to do, and that it's functioning the way that it should. Now, equipment, this may be both either at the end of the packaging line, or it may be equipment that goes back to the company that's producing our equipment, so the packaging manufacturer in place. And so it's looking at that equipment, and one of the things that is in place to look at that is to make sure that it is how can we error proof it? And so this is an example here of this lug that it will only fit into that hole in one way. And so this is a case of that the operator who has that, they can't make a mistake with that they can only fit it into that operation in one way that's there. And so it can be the same thing, is that with equipment operation, is that, do the maintenance personnel who are setting this up, do they understand the proper setup and maintenance of the equipment? So, we might have that training back in under our people, but if they're setting it up, if it's machine vision or a UPC reader, do they understand how, what are the things that could go wrong with that? And so it's a part of equipment is not just the operation, but it's also what equipment we've put on the line. Do we have error detection equipment? So thinking of vision systems that are going to look and make sure that we've got the right package that's on there. Barcode scanners, so looking that the barcode is correct. But even with that, we have to be careful because there was a recall just recently where the barcode was correct, but the wrong barcode had been put onto a package. So we'll get into that when we look at material. So we have to, it's not just one thing. It's not just saying, okay, well, we've got a barcode scanner. We don't need to do anything else, because what if the barcode is incorrect? So as well with equipment operation and maintenance, is reviewing and saying if the system resets. So let's say we have to reset the system. Does it go back to a previous version of the database where we may not have proper allergen information that's in there? So we need to make sure that our system, our equipment, that we've tested it for failure and that we've verified that it's working effectively and correctly. So some of the things that we can do here to error proof, I was into a packaging manufacturer, and what they had was as they were putting new packaging on for printing on a packaging machine is they had different guides for all of the different packages. And so an operator physically could not load an incorrect packaging into the machine, so that it wasn't possible for the wrong label to be on that machine. So that was one of the things that they had done. It was something that was visually apparent, and the operator couldn't make a mistake. Where we have an increased opportunity for errors is all packaging is able to be loaded the same way. So if we had, if we were putting that in, that if we had an allergen containing package and a non-allergen, there's nothing that's going to indicate that there's a problem. Another one with the equipment with error proofing is that inline UPC reader is, again, a verification, perhaps, during setup, verification that UPC reader is matching up with the packaging that's supposed to be on there. Our increased opportunity for error is that the UPC reader is automatic. It's set up. It's computer based. We don't need to check anything. So if we go with that attitude, having no means of verification, we've got probably an increase of opportunity for error. So food safety system, looking at our equipment here, is going back, that we've looked at some of those reviews, is now going back and looking at our documentation and saying, okay, so for preventative maintenance, what is the preventative maintenance that's needed for those pieces of equipment? The vision system, the UPC reader, are our maintenance people, are they, fully competent to handle that and set it up and verify it? In which case, are the procedures for the equipment set up, are they clear? Is somebody who's going by those documented procedures able to set that equipment up correctly so that it is identifying where we would have an error that was in place? Okay, so we've looked at people, we've looked at equipment. The next one is materials. And this is really, it's that packaging material. And again, what we want to make sure here is that it is accurate, that it is the current label that's on that package, that it's matching up with what's in place. And so that with materials, it starts right from the design of the materials right through until it goes onto the package. So some of the things that can happen with packaging and labeling materials is it's incorrect printing. Is that I had this happen when I was working in industry, is that our packaging supplier had the packaging supplier had lost a portion of the packaging plate, and without contacting us, had thought that they had found the correct part of the plate, put them together, and printed all of the packaging with one main panel, and then that the incorrect ingredient list that was on there going through. So incorrect printing. Misprints, what it may be is, that one that it's not correct for the label. Out of date text that looks at this, have we provided the updated ingredient list for the packaging that's there, or is the packaging person who's printing that, are they using out-of-date information? Think of going back, if it was in-house, how is our database kept up to date, that they might be printing materials in-house? And then as well is interleaving and roll splicing. Is that I'm not sure how familiar you are with packaging, but oftentimes with big packaging, printing, they may print 5 or 6 different packages on the same line as it's going through. And if the packaging supplier, some of those packaging pieces of packaging as they're cut slip in between each other, then we may have incorrect incorrect labeled product with only just a couple within a major, within the main body of the rest of the packaging. So these are things that we have to look at. Now, one of the things is that what will often happen is that when we go through and we look at this when the materials are coming in, we may look at that material when it's first, when we're first making a change, but it's really important that we're continuing to look at that material throughout the life of that material it's coming through. Kind of one of the companies, a lot of times in an assessment, they've said, okay, we'll look at the packaging at receipt. We look at packaging before loading and before loading into the packaging equipment. The thing is that yes, they might detect incorrect packaging, but now we don't have the, if it wasn't detected at receipt, we now have potential of having product ready to be packaged and we don't have the correct packaging that's there. So one company reported, when we were speaking with them, one company reported they had to approve the label each run of the packaging supplier, not just at the initial proof, that every time that packaging supplier was going to print labels for them, there had to be a sign off from the company that it was correct. And this is an example. This one happened just recently in Europe, that this was a company, and again, it was one of the things that was there. The product that it was packed into was tomato chutney. However, if you look just to the right, the ingredient list that's there is strawberry jam. Now, this was both a printing error, but it's also an allergen issue, because what was missing from all of the ingredients, but with tomato chutney, there were 2 allergens in that product, depending on what country you're in, was sulfites and mustard were not on that allergen label. And so with this one, if there had been that check with each print run, this should have been caught beforehand. It was the company who was packaging the product did catch it, but it had already some of the product had already made it to market. And so when we want to look at this, is we want to take that back. Not only just are we able to detect it when we're putting product into the package, we want to take that print error back to the supplier themselves so that it's not even getting printed in the first place. That's there. So what it is that the printers, or again, if you do your own in-house printing, is that what mistakes can be made during label design that's in place. If we're wanting to match it up with that one that we just saw with the different ingredient list and the product itself that's there. So a mistake during design, and then that incorrect information at label production setup and production is here. What we want to look at is when changing packaging declarations, either a new formula, that we're confirming with the packaging supplier. Did they have any material that they've already printed? Can we use that up first, because so that it doesn't get sent to us later. One of the other things that incorrect information or helping in terms of print error is one of the things that we did when I was in industry, is that to make it very clear with products that had allergens in them, what we would do is in a place where it wouldn't be really obvious, so sort of where the product might have, where it was attached at the top, we would use a color-coded bar there that would show if there was an allergen in that product. And so we had different colors that we could match up with the packaging itself. This made it easier for our operators in-house. They still were supposed to check the ingredient list, but it was a very visual check for them as to whether they had the right information or not. Another situation that can happen with allergen labeling with is customers is that there's a communication disconnect. Perhaps you've made a change to your formula, to the recipe in the facility, but your customer is the one who's responsible for providing the packaging, and so they didn't get the information that there had been a change that was there. And so some of the things that we see are, that customer makes changes and they haven't communicated it to you. You may have a supplier change so that now we've got some may contain statements that may be on there. The customer wants clean label. They don't want that may contain statement on there. It's necessary to review this, really engage with your customer if they're providing the information to you, to let them know that we can't take that may contain statement off of if it is with coming in on a raw material or an ingredient that's coming into us. So it's part of this is not only the policies that are in there, so clear policies not only for the label approval people who are in place, but also so that sales and marketing personnel, people who are talking with the customer, so that they understand what the potential consequences are if the customer doesn't make these changes to their packaging, or that they want changes being made that we cannot make that's in place. One of the other issues with packaging and with the materials is that we may have that we need to look at is, do all the packaging materials look alike? And I'm not Campbell's soup. We talk about the red and white soup can. Is that this? It's their brand that's there. So they look very similar at the line. So is the personnel as the operator, are they able to read the label? Do they know that they need to read the label, that UPC, the setup for the UPC that's in place? In some cases, the print text may be hard to read. Now, this is a little bit of if it's very hard to read, it may mean that you're not meeting legal requirements for packaging labeling, because remember, the consumer has to read it. But what it may be is it's hard to read for the operator. As we get older, we can't see quite as well. So is the print text hard to read? Or as we do more international product, we may be printing product that's not in the language of personnel. And so it's really key in this case that we have some means of being able to review that product to make sure that we are putting the right packaging, or that the packaging labeling is correct. And so we have barcode scanning, image checks that are in place. But one sort of low-tech approach that was described to us by one company, now they weren't a Campbell's soup, obviously, they didn't have that volume of product, but what they did was they had made clear acetate prints of what the label was supposed to look like. And so they were able to overlay that acetate on top of the label that was going to be printed. And so any mismatches, they were easily, readily seen and visually seen, so that they could not use that packaging, even though the operator wasn't capable of being able to read the text that was there. So sort of some error proofing that we can do for this one is, again, the packaging design is reducing the opportunities for errors, looking at some color coding. Again, this can be on the inside of a fold that's there, so that it doesn't affect the brand appearance of the product, but that it's visually apparent for the operator that they know what packaging to put on. And that our increase, where we increase, is if we've got really similar design. One of the other ones is that looking at segregation, is that companies, what they'll do is for packaging materials coming from their suppliers, is they have as part of their policies, there's no mixing of of different SKUs on the pallets or the racking. so that somebody hasn't perhaps grabbed out of one box and then they grab from the next box thinking it's the same thing, whereas there's been a mix-up. If we allow our suppliers to mix a number of different packaging labels, that's really increasing our opportunity for error that's there. And so looking at some of the things to go back and look at the food safety system, do we have, what is our practices around purchasing supplier approval? Who's responsible for design approval? Is there someone, is that a marketing person who may not understand labeling, or is there a person who's, a food safety person who's looking that formula and that ingredient list match up? So looking at that food safety person that's in place, receiving, that there is every time that label, that package that's received, that we're checking that it's the right one, not just the first couple of times when it comes in, but every time when it comes in. Is it correct? Is that in our procedure? Do we have a pre-use review? So, before it gets moved to the line, is somebody again checking and making sure that it's the right in place? In production review, so every time there's a check, is it our policy? Is it a written policy, and is it something that supervisors and managers are enforcing, that we are checking that it is the right packaging that goes on? Does QA, again, a label review program, have we, kind of thinking in terms of the database that we're drawing from, is that database up to date? So it's looking at this label review. Again, not necessarily, it's often done as part of an internal audit, but this is really looking deeper. That's there, that it's been changed. And then a change management. How do we inform customers if we've had a change to our formulation? If we've introduced new products that now we may need a may contain statement on that package. So what is our interaction with that customer, getting approval from that customer, and then making sure that that customer has made changes to their packaging. Going on. So methods here is looking at, there's a variety of ways that methods can come into place. Is that a line error? That it may be that, there was a change in the schedule, and so now we've got the wrong product on there. Or that the methods, for how do we make sure that making it impossible for somebody to put the incorrect label on, or to put packed in the wrong package. I have know of one company, what they do is for their rework, they will store their rework in a separate area, allergen containing rework in a separate area to where their normal rework would be stored. They've made it very difficult. It's about a 5-10 minute walk for somebody to go and get the allergen containing rework. So that's their method that they have in there. So, and then looking at all of the methods that we have going through, from receiving, picking the material that's in place, where could we have an error that would occur? And so what we have to do is in here is sort of look at what our errors and methods can be. So if we don't have standardized methods, is it sometimes with each shift, each shift has their own way of doing things. So, how we set up the machines, how we, stage the packaging that's there. So, one of the things that GFSI or the different GFSI programs are looking at is that we only have packaging that's for a product currently being packed available at the line. So what if night shift decides, well, they're going to bring all the packaging to the line. Now we've changed our method, and now we've got more chance for an error that would be there. Workflow. As we look at this kind of through the whole flow, where do we have an increase for mistakes? Is it the wrong packaging that was received? Where it was being stored? Was it where it was being picked up? And the one is, as I said, sort of, do we only have packaging that is currently being, for product currently being packed at the line, or do we have, all of the packaging easily accessible because, it's more efficient, that's there, that, we don't have to go and bring the material in. However, what now it is we're lacking the safety. And so somebody could incorrectly grab that wrong packaging that's there. It may also be in terms of not just bringing the packaging to the line, but what happens if we've got packaging left over and we finish packaging that product? What are the procedures for returning that packaging back to storage? Does it get tossed onto the closest pallet and the closest box of material, or is the procedure to put it back into the right packaging? Change management. So this can be, are the, if there's been a change in the schedule, how is that communicated to the line that's there? The line clearances that are in place. Is it between all of the packaging? Is it signed off? Is it in place, or is it, the packaging is done, that's in place? Labels at line kind of check. The checks are being done by untrained personnel that they don't understand. And this goes back to our training. And this is where a lot of these issues go back and forth, is that this is the untrained personnel that's there and that not matched to product changes. So some of the things we can do here is that for picking, that if we see that there's a label SKU number, and so the person who's picking that has to match that on the record sheet and they record it. We increase it if there's no check. Staging, QC checks the staged packaging and matches to the production schedule. Where our increase is that if all of the packaging is brought in. For loading, here the operator's checking that SKU number against the schedule. Is it matching up with what's there, or no documented check? So looking at methods, here in our food safety systems back, what is our, when we're setting up contracts with suppliers, who does the design? Who has the approval? Think of that company that I said that they wanted approval every time their packaging was being printed, not just the first time. That approval that's in place, receiving. What's your practice around sampling and testing? Is it every time packaging comes in, is it looking at, just one sample, or is it looking at, kind of a representative sample that's there? Storing. What happens to obsolete labels? What happens with that? Are they taken out of so that it's, again, part of it is that they're just not accessible to someone. So looking at what's in place, production systems, and then again, who's responsible for checking those labels? What's their training in place? I'm going to speed up. I see I'm a little bit slow here. So the environment here, with the environment, is how easy is it going to be for the person to be able to make those changes? So when we look at the environment, it's the physical environment and the behavior that's in place. So with light, we're having to read text. So do we have light that's going to be able to allow us to see that text, the labels, the lot numbers, the SKU numbers that are in place? Do we have, is it hard, physical, so that we've got a lot of interruptions that are happening there, distractions, so that it may make it more difficult for us to concentrate. It also is with that noise, is it may make it that we can't hear when somebody tells us that there's been a change. And then hopefully your label area doesn't look like this, but is there a mix-up? Who has access to those materials? Can somebody just come in and grab the material, the packaging, if you're printing it in-house, or are they locked up? Or it may be that there's just no workstation. There's nothing where somebody can actually lay it out and look to see, what the checks are against what the one that was there. And then finally with environment, it's also culture. Is that what is the culture within the company? Are the rules to be followed, or is it expected that efficiency, just get it packed and get it out the door? And so it's looking at that and making sure that it's the right things are being done, that even though we have all of these rules, what is in place. So some things here is that the requirement is for the environment packaging checks are done during label and label reloading that's there. They're conducting those checks, and it's the operator's been given this responsibility, or chances for error increased is they're either skipping that or they're relying on QC. And perhaps what's happening is that the operator's making a change during the making a change so that QC is not available, and they go ahead and they skip that label or packaging check, and that's the one where there is something. So looking at environment here, it's storage and facility and lighting that we have. And then coming up is that the last one is really measurement, and this is kind of measurement and information, is that we're looking and saying, so how is that information available at the line? Available that's there. Is it something that's available in real time? Is it computer based that they can look at, or is it something that's printed and perhaps it's been out of date or not current? It's been more than once when I've been in a supervisor's office. The supervisor wasn't there. The couple of people were saying, well, I think there's supposed to be an allergen cleanup, before we change this packaging. And well, it's not on the schedule. And that's because the schedule had been printed out the previous day. So who has access to it? Does the operator have access that they can see those changes? And then the accuracy, if there's been changes to that allergen cleaning, changes to the SKU, are those readily available? And so some of the things we can do there for error proofing is production schedule is have that accessible by computer at their workstation, so that they see, if there was a change made at 3 o'clock, they know that there's going to have to be a packaging change that's associated with that. Chances, what it is that with going through is where we have chances for an increase is if it's not real time. And then here is really kind of going back and looking at our food safety system. How is that accessibility that's there? That production system, how are changes communicated to people? Are they in real time? And then QA and QC, is this an operator responsibility, or is everything left to QA and QC to go through? So just to finish off, if we only looked at packaging and labeling today, it can be something that you can look at, go back and look at all of those other things. But we looked at, what role people have, the equipment, materials, going down through and saying, okay, what are the things that have an impact on being able to put that right package on the line? And then as part of that is then taking that information and saying, okay, do the processes increase or decrease our opportunity for the error, or do they increase our opportunity to detect the error that's in place? So it's looking at what is in the process that's going to mean that we never have an allergen packaging being misprinted and having the opportunity for it to be put incorrectly on the line. So I thank you very much, and I'm going to stop sharing now and turn control back over to Simon. Thank you.
Well, Jennifer, yeah, you can stop sharing your screen now. That was, I can't believe you achieved that to finish bang on the hour. Look at that. And yeah, fantastic. The presentation itself, an absolute gold mine of practical information there. I love fish bones of a way of looking at any problem or potential improvement, and that I'm sure the attendees, when they pick through that, will give them a checklist, lots of ways of looking at the system from all different angles, up, down, sideways, that will help them put in checks and balances that will improve their allergen management. So yeah, really good, Jennifer. And considering it wasn't your presentation, you did a marvelous job. Really good. We'll just take. We are on the hour, but we'll just see if we can take a couple of questions at least.
Actually, Simon, what it is if there are questions we don't get answered, if you send them to me, I'll answer them and return them to you.
Oh, should we do it that way then?
If
Yeah, because we're getting a lot of great presentation and thanks at the moment. Yeah, I think what we'll do is, there is a lot of information to digest. What's that, John? I have realised that a QP is needed. Quality planner. How much different are rules about allergen in US and versus EU?
It depends. There's differences in what would be the priority allergens. So in the U.S., it's referred to as being the big eight. In Europe, I believe it's more mustard and celery. There's different ones. New Zealand, it just added. Oh my gosh, it's just gone out of my mind. It's a flower. That's in place. So there's different ones around the world. So it's important that if you are sending product to different areas, that you are aware of what the priority allergens are in that area, and vice versa. If you're getting ingredients from those areas, that there may be lupin. That was the one I was trying to think of for New Zealand. There may be something that is coming in from that country that you would not have in your country. So it's important to know international.
Yeah, Rita's just backed that up.
Yeah.
Your allergen declaration must match the country of destination. Yeah. Anybody else with a question? I can't scroll down. There's too many comments. Lupin is also an EU allergen as well. There's 14 on the EU list.
Yeah, and so you've got 14. US has 8.
Yeah. Sulfites. Is sulfites on?
It's not in. Now, it's the sulfites is an interesting one for the U.S. It is not on their allergen declaration list because they've said it's not a protein. However, sulfites must be declared on the label in the U.S.
Right.
It's a different declaration. It's not from an allergen, but it must be declared.
And I think sulfites are in wine quite a bit, aren't they?
Yes.
Aisha is asking, if a plant has more than 6 allergens, how to validate the cleaning?
Oh, I think that's a whole course, a whole hour on its own. Part of it is that you'd have to look at what ELISA swabs are the ones that are best because it will go down to very low levels, but we'd realize that there may not be an ELISA swab for each one of the 6 allergens that are in place. So what you do is look at what would be perhaps the most difficult one to clean. Hopefully there's an ELISA swab for that one. The other thing with that validation is to swab before you clean because you want to check and make sure that the allergen was there. I have a lot of people who will clean, do the swabbing, they're not picking anything up and say that their cleaning program is validated, but there wasn't anything. They wouldn't have been able to pick anything up in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. Maribel, when you put may contain, not clear information, I think they are saying I'm not cleaning my workplace.
Actually, that is you know what, I've run across that a number of times, that may contain just means that you've put GMPs. You're really focusing on those GMPs, but there's still a potential. And I ran into this. I was at a company a couple of weeks ago, and I had a couple of employees say, well, we put may contain, so we don't need to do any of these practices, right? No, may contain means you've done everything from a good manufacturing practice to try and eliminate it, but there's still the potential, so you put a may contain.
Yeah. So do you think fundamentally may contain is a valid thing, or should it be banned?
It has, part of it is because allergens, it's only been about 25 years that we've recognized the impact of allergens. Most of us are working in plants, working with equipment that was designed for productivity, not for cleaning. And I know when I worked with bakeries, worked in the bakeries, we could have cleaned for 72 hours in some cases, and we would have still had bits and pieces where it was where we would pick up allergens, potential allergens that was there. So that's why the may contain. Now today, a new plant with new equipment probably should be a lot less reason to put a may contain.
Yeah, it depends.
Document.
It depends of where your motive is. If you genuinely may contain, but if you put may contain all the 8 or 14 allergens, then that's just lazy in a
Well,
way.
Well, actually, what it is that I'm more familiar with Canadian legislation, is that with our may contain, it must be reasonable to have expected that allergen would have been in the product. So, for example, there was a company that sold bottled water, and they had may contained about 6 of the allergens, and the regulatory agency went, no, that's not reasonable
Right.
that
Okay.
that was in there.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think we'll leave it there for now, Jennifer. Just appreciate it. You've done a great job again, and we'll look forward to having you back again in the near future. So thanks from all the attendees today, everybody that will see the recording, from myself.
Okay, and if you send the questions to me, I'll answer them and get them back to you, Simon.
I will do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, ladies and gents. The only thing now is to load your certificate in the sidebar, which I've now done. It is recorded today. We will follow up with an email within a few hours with the recording and a copy of the presentation slides, which I know you're all dying to get your hands on, and the certificate. Next week we've got Britta Ball, it's presented before, and it's 3 requirements for commitment to food safety. 3 requirements for commitment to food safety. Let's see if you can think of 1, 2, or all 3 of those, and hope to see you next Friday. For now, happy Friday. Enjoy the rest of your day, and have a great weekend, and see you next week. Cheers. Bye.